promised them in the Bible we have to have taxes because of the fall. There has to be a means of paying for the judge. That effectively is what the state is before God. God made two ministries, that of grace and that of the sword. And you might say the family is his third sphere of sovereignty. The family is under both, actually. Members, the family members are in the church, and the family members are under the state. That is to say, protected by the state and the sword. That is what the state has a job to do, is to oppress evil, to have a proper definition of what's evil and a proper definition of what is good, and then oppress those that are evil. Those evil unto death are put to death by the sword, and those who are evil not unto death, but whom it is required to make restitution, they be brought to serve, to pay restitution, and that is they're brought to the court to make restitution. That's how God, in His dispensation for man, controls the state. Read Romans 13 about what the job of the state is. It has a limited assignment, and is put there. These authorities are put there by God. But of course, the abuse of that authority is widespread, especially here we are now in the 21st century. The 20th century has been the century for the state, and the scale of abuses by the wielder of the sword have been greater than at any time in history. And you have the great dictatorships, Marxist, socialist dictatorships, you might say left-wing dictatorships. And even in our country, we have national socialism without the racial. We don't have the ethnic cleansing goals that the Nazis had, but we have a kind of national socialism as well, with a very fierce claim by the national government of Washington against all the people and against the states. The states have been bought off. They are administrative units of the national power, effectively. And what we want to have over time is a reduction of that and an increase in the free market. That is to say, an increase of what you have available to you with a reduced tax burden over time, and fewer players in the marketplace. If you're in business, fewer players in the marketplace who can achieve huge scale with government complicity or control or benefit. That's what we have today. It's called corporatism. Or cartel capitalism or debt capitalism. Those are all warped versions of capitalism, right? Capitalism in general is wonderful and true and good, and that's because that's the way God made it. God made capitalism to work, but because of the fall, because of the sin problem men have, they don't have genuine free market capitalism. They have various forms of it. Fascism is state-controlled capitalism, right? It's just capital and capitalism, the creation of goods and services run by the state with nominal control by the owners, of either through corporations or personally through families and through private boards. Those decisions are not private and market oriented. They are state oriented, and that's what fascism is. We have the Antifas, right? And then we have the fascists who run the system. They're Republican and Democrat, national economy people, right? And then we have the supposed Antifas, the anti-fascists, who are just Marxists. They are cultural Marxists, and they're also fascists as well. They just have a leftist flavor in their rhetoric, and they're not about free anything. They're about government control of the press, government control of speech, and they have their pets, including the queer lobby. That's a pet of the anti-fascist movement. They're all in members of the same family, okay? and my position is not either of them. And indeed, the left sometimes makes very astute analyses of problems that we see. Sometimes the right does, but neither has hegemony over the issues. But I would say the free market analysis is probably the best. It's the most comprehensive, and among the best defenders of the free market analysis living would be Gary North. He is a writer in the Atlanta area and is a theologian and a historian. I've read many of his books, and he has a whole book on the economic analysis of the book of Leviticus, right, or the book of Deuteronomy. Powerful volumes that are sadly neglected by Christians who think that somehow God doesn't care about society at large, only the individual, right? That's what we have, whether it's City Church or even the Reformed Church in Chattanooga, the Baptist Church, all of them uniformly, I would say, reject any kind of social theory. They reject that God has anything to say about whether or not you should have a price gouging statute in your state, right? They would say, well, we're just not sure about that. That's government. We leave that to the state to decide whether that's right. But in principle, any interference in the marketplace is a form of judgment, right? If there are players in your field of business that have special favors, they have tax breaks, they have subsidies, they have controls of licenses, they have controls of systems, which give them the upper edge, even though their products are inferior. Well, you're living in a system that's under judgment. It is a judgment of God when you can't make your living freely and compete freely and openly, when you have a vertical society rather than the horizontal society, which is implied in my argument here at the David Tulis Show in local economy and the free market. Local economy envisions horizontality rather than verticality. Okay, it is among many, the view of the free market, the view of the liberal the classical liberal, such as I am, is that there are innumerable players in a horizontal field. No one is above anybody else, effectively. I mean, in some instances there are. If you're a better business in computing repair, you're going to have more business than somebody who's average, right? So there are some people who are larger than others, but because there is no mammoth state, there is no centralized unitary state of what we have known for the past 150 years, you don't have gigantic behemoths either in business or government, and you have a horizontal society. You don't have a power society. You have a voluntarist society, which is a blessing in which we don't deserve. We don't deserve it, and that's because we don't want it. Look at all the conservatives who are pro-police, right? They're virulently pro-police, and they would read a story such as the one that's this morning at Nooganomics.com at the top of the page. Again, go to Nooganomics.com and see what we have in the way of police colonoscopies, right? Police vaginal exams on the side of the road in full view of the public, right? This is happening again and again. Forced blood draws. There is a litany of cases that constitutional attorney John Whitehead brings to your attention. And we have to say, when will that come to an end? There is a rising revolt against policing, and it's going to get worse, and the tensions are going to rise. But I think there are some quarters in which there is reform in view, and Chattanooga may be one of them. And that would be apparently, from what I can gather, though I'm under a press ban from the mayor's office, it could be the mayor himself, Mayor Andy Burke, a liberal Democrat who has ambitions to run possibly for governor or a federal congressional seat. He may be on the right in this one. And that would be that policing is corrosive and bitter and has generated huge hatred, huge resentment among many people, especially the poor. That would be the Democratic base. And that we need to come to an end of this, you might say, of kind of official terrorism against classes of people, and we need to have a police force that is about helping people, about encouraging them to maintain their agreements. That would be commercial traffic and transportation, and another theory, and perhaps Fred Fletcher did have some of that in view with the community policing theory that he espoused, which is a 20-year-old concept, which doesn't really go far enough. Community policing is not police reform, and police reform is 4 major planks. And we have to hope that here in Chattanooga, under the new chief David Roddy, that there will be reforms and there will be respect to the citizen. In other words, never should an officer ever say MF. That should never ever fall from the list of an officer under any circumstance, even if he's chasing a robbery suspect and they have the man on the ground. You do not use MF. You just don't. You just don't use S. You don't use D. You don't use any foul language at all. No city employee ever in an official capacity should ever use words like F or MF, ever. It just shouldn't happen. Even if passions are high, adrenaline is pumping, weapons are drawn, and the officers are panting from the chase, there should not be. use of words like that ever. They should anything that an officer says should be able to be repeated in front of his family, to whom he hopes to go and with whom he hopes to be at the end of the day. Well, this is David Tulis, and the question about the gouging statute, I think, is important. We have a scenario. Just think for a second. You run a store, okay? Let's say you're in Florida, along a highway, and in the clump of palm trees out at the corner of your lot, there are four of them. They're waving a bit, and already some coconuts have fallen off from some early winds coming your way from Storm Irma. And you can hear the tapping sounds of people boarding up their hotels and their 8-story suites along the shoreline. And there's alarm in the air. People are already thinking of moving out. And let's say a couple days out now, there's a real stress in the economy, right? Supplies are not keeping up, and people are filling up gas tanks, and there's a real sense of foreboding. Well, you're down in your supply of water. The truck has not arrived, and you can't raise the price under the gouging statute. Well, let's say that there's let's say that you have Denassi water going for, let's say, $25. I don't know what it costs, but $25 for a case of it, and a very big, heavy thing. And you can't raise the price, okay? And so it's $25. You've got 4 left. Now, coming into your store is a man who has some children, okay? He's got a wife and children at home. Let's say he's going to ride out the storm. And at $25, he'll say, well, I've got $100 on me, and I can afford to take all he's got, clean him out, in other words. So he puts a $100 bill down, pays the tax on top of that. He's got a few extra bills to pay that and some coin, and walks out with 4 cases of water. Now, if the price had been where it should be, and that would be $100, the price of a case of water should be $100 in this circumstance. Here's what happens. Now, the man who raises his price, pretend there's no gouging statute, he raises the price to $100. He is doing what's reasonable and rational, because to him, it's not that he needs the money, he needs to allocate that resource. If he's raising the price, it's worth more. Suddenly, it's not worth $25 anymore to him, it's worth $100, right? Because resupply is going to be more difficult, it's uncertain, and you raise the price when demand rises. Why? Well, if it were $100, the man who came in first with the children at home would say, well, yeah, I'll buy one. Okay, I'll buy one. We'll be good for, so beef me up just a bit, and I'll be good with one. And the man who comes in next, who's got 4 children at home, right? The first man had, let's say he had 3. The man who comes in next with 4 has a $100 bill too. He can afford to buy. He can afford to buy one, and in fact, he needs to buy 2 because he's got children at home. So he buys one at $100, and he'll pay that. He might buy 2 if he could be. He's limited. Okay, so raising the price, what it does, it creates the thinking in the customer. What do I need? The first man didn't really need 4, but he could afford them, right? So for convenience, for prudence, right, for caution, because he's careful and concerned about his family, he will buy all 4 and wipe out the stock in that store. He wipes it out. If it had been $100, he would have bought 1, and the asset would have been available for the next man who really needed it even more because he had an extra child at home. You see how markets work? And if prices are of cases of water are at $100, people elsewhere are going to get the idea, well, wait a minute. I'm gonna not go to my job for the next week. I'm gonna buy up all the water supplies I can, and I'm gonna go down to Florida and make a profit. I'm gonna go down there and sell water from the back of my straight-bodied rental truck at $100 a case. Is that man evil? Now, you're probably like a lot of people, and your initial thought is, well, man, he's just an opportunist. He's just wicked. He's trying to take advantage of people's problems. Well, that's what the marketplace does, right? Think about it. The marketplace makes people step in to provide a service or a good that's in demand. Why is there a demand? Because there's an emergency. Are people willing to pay more for that product? They sure are. Why are they willing to pay more? Because it's an emergency. In an emergency, you'll pay quadruple the price for gas. You'll pay 10 times the price for ammo if you need it, okay? If you've got it, you'll pay for it. Why? Because it's important. And you're not a victim. The man who buys a case of Denasi water for $100 is not a victim, okay? He's glad to pay it. He's glad to pay it. And he is taking care of his family. The supplier is not the gouger. The gouger is the supplier who's been villainized by the state. Again, if you take the state's perspective, you're going to have problems in other areas of the economy as well. You're not going to understand how the marketplace works. You're going to be probably someone who says, well, we do have to raise taxes in Hamilton County for public schools because it's important, right? And so your thinking is pro-state. Now, I say pro-state as opposed to pro-government because I'm pro-government. This is David Tulis here at AM 1240 and FM 92.7 and also 95.3 FM HD4. I am pro-government. I'm very pro-government. And caller, you're live on the David Tulis Show. What's on your mind? Thanks for calling.
Free Enterprise Mike Steele is going to disagree with you. And this is why. David Tulis can drive down there and put water on the back of his truck and sell it for $1,000 a bottle. And that's your choice to do that. But the second you become a corporation and you do that and you're under the rules of the state, you could be fined. Because the primary function of a corporation, read this in Hale versus Hinkle, is for the good of the public. And that corporation is controlled by the state. So individuals that get charged with price gouging are typically corporations that are under the jurisdiction of the state, at least their statutory jurisdiction. And should they be fined? Absolutely. You're raising gas prices. If you're Walmart or you're some major company and you're a corporation, even if you're an individual with a corporation, and that bottle of water is $1 and you raise it to $10, you should go to jail. But David Tulis that bottles his own water that doesn't have a corporation, he can sell for $1,000 a bottle. That's the difference, and that's what we're not addressing.
Okay, well, Mike, you're saying that a corporation shouldn't do it. A corporation is bound by the gouging statute, and an individual is not. That's not really dealing with the problem. The problem is, should the marketplace be interfered with by the state to begin with at any point? Should the state set floors on prices? Should the state set ceilings on prices? And the answer is no. Whenever it does, it creates an automatic shortage. It creates friction. It creates misallocation. And misallocation is rational, okay? The fact that the man who didn't need the 4 case of water bought them is a misallocation. It's not irrational. It's perfectly rational, okay? He was right to act rationally, and it's sad and unfortunate that the man who needed it, who came in just 5 minutes later, couldn't get it because he, acting rationally, was able to buy at an artificially reduced price. Again, it's artificially reduced by the statute because the statute forbids the proper pricing of that water in the store. No one is acting maliciously here. No, the seller's not being malicious to raise the price. The first buyer's not being malicious or greedy to buy the 4. He's acting rationally to buy the 4. But the problem is when the statute creates irrationality. The problem is when the state sets a price, it is always irrational. There's no reason it should stay. These are irrational. And that's what people who are socialists accept. They accept irrationality. They accept that a committee can set the price for something that only the market can truly evaluate the worth of. And I say this is true whether you're in Florida or whether you're here in Hamilton County in Chattanooga. The county school board is setting a value on schooling services at $12,000 a student, and it's going to raise taxes. The real price of education for a child, says this dad of homeschool children, is probably $2,000-3,000 at the most. And we have irrationality, and we accept it. We accept irrationality because we want the comfort of being cared for by our municipal corporations, our county corporations, our states. We are a weak people indeed, unless you listen to David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader.